we're back, and this hour we get to go down to Texas and talk to our old buddy, Gentleman Jim Mars, who knows more than he'll ever reveal. But he's done pretty well, considering he's got about 8 major books out now. Is it 8?
Yeah, something like that.
Who's counting, right?
Who's counting when you're having fun?
Are you having fun?
Yeah. It's what an exciting time to live in.
Now there's an optimist for you.
Well, I lived in the 50s, and it was kind of boring, really, except for the constant threat of annihilation by Soviet nuclear bombs.
Never happened.
But it didn't happen, did it?
No, that whole thing was a game. We know that now.
Yeah, that's true. Because what we now know is the same people created communism and was pretty much running the Soviet Union through the money. Were the same people created the Nazis in Germany, and they're the same people running the show in this country today.
You mean
the money guys?
The Zionist banking cartel known as the City of London is primarily at the center of this malignancy, this malevolency, this evil that is running rampant on the planet?
Well, here's what I want to know. I was just glancing over. They finally identified the gunman in Alabama that killed 10 people.
Tell me more.
Well, they said it's Michael McClendon, okay? And all his neighbors said, well, what a nice guy. We knew he had guns, but, he's a nice guy. And, here's the question that nobody's asking, and I'll bet you a dime against a donut, nobody will ask it. What type of antidepressants is Michael McClendon on?
It's the first thing to disappear.
Exactly.
Oh, time and time again.
Exactly.
These people, look, your chances of committing suicide are 300% greater immediately as soon as you go on those things.
And about 400% if you go off of them.
There you go. Thank you.
Apparently going off of them is worse than getting on them.
Some doctors are honest enough to tell their patients that, if you start on these things, you'll probably be on them the rest of your life.
I know.
That's the truth, too.
Well, let me tell you a little narrative here, a personal narrative. When I was writing my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, and I sent the manuscript in, and somewhere back in there talking about all these Nazi-based pharmaceuticals, it all comes from IG Farben, right?
Yep.
All the major pharmaceutical corporations today own their genesis and their licenses and their copyrights and their patents to IG Farben. That was the bedrock of German Nazism, right? So I simply wrote a paragraph in there, kind of a throwaway, that said, with all these drugs and all the drugging of the teenagers, I said, is it any wonder that teen suicides are way up, and now we have the phenomenon of these school shootings and other apparently random shootings like Virginia Tech, and now this shooting in Alabama.
See, there's an epidemic of random out there, isn't it?
Yeah. That's, I guess they're going to have to become members of the Lone Nut Society.
Right.
They're all lone nuts. They're just all.
They are.
They're just lone nuts.
No,
there's no pattern. There's no pattern. There's no anything going on.
Of course not. The Oswald virus.
That's right. So I get the proof copy back, and my editor's written here. He says, you can't say that. He said none of those school shooters were on mind-altering drugs.
Oh, really?
That's an educated person in New York City in a high position. I went, what? So I started to argue with him, but then I thought, no, I'm not going to get a big argument. So I just went, did my homework, and found out, sure enough, that almost every single one of the school shooters were on some sort of psychotropic drug, and at one time or another, this was mentioned briefly here, there, everywhere.
It shows up often in about the 20th paragraph of the second day, and that's it.
Then it goes away.
We don't know, Jim. Let me say one other thing. Excuse me. We don't know for a fact that every one of those people
I think I would venture to say every one of them. The problem is you can't say that because several of them, such as Mr. Cho, who initially was reported to have been on psychiatric help and taking psychiatric medicine, his medical records are sealed. So, there's a few of them there that their records are sealed, and so we can't find out for sure if they were on or not, but by all the accounts, they were. So I think they all were, but I would have to say in all honesty that almost all of them.
We know from the mainstream controlled media that most all of them were. We know that much just by reading the stories.
Just by reading the stories, by digging into the stories. So rather than argue with this editor, I simply did my homework and added 2.5 pages of listings of all these people who were on drugs, included it in the manuscript, sent it back, and lo and behold, it's in the book. So, folks, if you doubt what I'm saying, read my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, and back towards the back when we get into the Nazi-based drugs, you're going to find 2.5 pages of all these school shooters that we know for a fact were on psychotropic drugs. It's the drugs, folks. It's not guns. Hell, I grew up in Texas. We took guns. Sometimes we even took guns to school, but nobody ever shot anybody. No, it's the drugs. And why don't we hear this? Why isn't our watchdog mass media all over this, okay? Because, folks, the pharmaceutical corporations are now one of, if not the largest direct-to-consumer advertiser in the United States. Some of you older listeners may recall, just a few years ago, you never saw a drug ad on television. And now, today, pick up any magazine. Pick up, turn on the TV. If they're not selling you a truck, they're selling you a drug. So, it's really, if you think we have a problem with illicit drugs, you ought to really check into the problem we have with licit drugs. It's amazing. Just another feature of modern life that nobody's being told about, and therefore, it's not happening.
Question. How many mass murders have been committed by people who've been smoking dope? Pot. Zero.
I can't think of any.
No, I've never heard of one. How many mass shootings have been involved with SSRIs?
Oh,
probably
almost all.
Well, we know that most all of them are. And it could very well be all of them.
Jeff, I think you'd agree that all of them are. The problem is we can't say that with any definitiveness because some of those records are sealed. You can't get to their medical records. You can't prove it. So, but I think I'm safe in saying almost all of the school shooters were on psychotropic drugs.
I have no question about none. Ask Dr. Ann Blake Tracy. She'll tell you. I mean, I talk to these people who study this stuff. They know. That's why in England they've outlawed SSRIs for any kid under the age of 18. Apparently, when you turn 18, you can handle them, but that's another story.
Right. When you're over 18, then you'll have accumulated a lot of guns.
That's
right. Can really be a danger.
See, but over here, they wouldn't do that. All they did was beef up the microscopically fine text warning on the labels. Right. And not even on the labels, on the inserts. And this is nuts. These drugs are so dangerous and so crude. It's horrible.
I know. Yeah. But the thing is, look, they've got the medical community, under their thumb because a doctor. And I could give you examples of this. You go to the doctor, you see the ads on TV, and you say, "I want this drug." And he says, "No, I really don't think you need that." And, you say, "Hey, I saw it on TV, and I want to be like the pretty girl that runs through the weeds and looks nice." And you go, "Well, okay, all right." So they prescribe it to you, and pretty soon, they got over prescriptions going, and so then the feds are all down on them,
Remember
and saying,
the woman in
"What are you
Texas?
doing? Let's check on you. We're going to monitor you for the next 6 months." So they got them under their thumb,
Remember the woman in Texas who killed all her kids?
Yeah.
She was on something like a megadose 4 or 5 times over the maximum, as I recall it. Several times at least over the maximum permissible, alleged, safe daily dose. And she was on 2 different ones. I mean, the poor woman was totally medicated into another state.
Exactly. And folks, just use your common sense. Is it possible that